This video is something that I have noticed, and a lot of people argue that the millennials or the younger generations are a little bit less connected with each other. They're more isolated than maybe. You could even argue that they're more selfish. They're less empathetic or whatever. These are strong words, but I'm just gonna use them in this video. And I do have some trouble connecting with millennials many times. Like I had this friend. I mean, obviously age is a factor. I had this friend from Washington D.C. He was like the first really young guy, a total millennial that I befriended, and we actually we had, this is like about 4 years ago, Sudanese American. He's like a real millennial, like always like on watching videos on YouTube, always on Instagram, blah blah blah. I kind of wanted to train myself to interact at that level, and I think I did well. But I guess I started trying to interact with another guy who was a lot younger. He was like 19, and there were some issues with meeting. Like he never, it was really hard for me to like agree on a time to meet because he never wanted to plan ahead. The whole day, like he couldn't say like we're gonna meet at 8 p.m. at that place. Like it's too hard for them. Like they're just in a constant rush to see what's next and don't want to commit to anything. And I mean, if you cannot commit at 8 p.m. to do something, it's just a little bit weird. But I mean, he would say like, I'll text you right before, and like it's just too little advance, with too little anticipation to plan something. All this being said, and this is just thinking about the millennial era, and all these tools are just very powerful tools. It's just so much easier to expose your ideas, and if they're good, they'll be heard to a much wider audience. It's so much easier to connect with people all over the world. Like a lot of things that I've done in the last years would have been impossible without the millennial era, because like, for example, I went traveling in Scotland in remote places, and I had like a strong support system just because I was connected with all these people that I knew. And I would have probably been very lonely like 2 centuries ago because I really didn't have anybody. I would probably have become depressed. This is just how positive technology is to our generation and our era. And this video channel that I'm doing, like, it would have been impossible in another time and circumstance. But going back to the millennials, and so how, like, there's probably ways in sociology to measure if millennials are actually becoming less empathetic, more selfish, more self-absorbed, and they probably are. And I mean, this is just how life is. But I think that one of the problems that we have is like a lot of the political leaders, even though they could really just be selfish many times. I mean, they would just say what they're supposed to say, and they would just never promote selfishness, at least not in public. That's the agenda, and that's the narrative that they would hear at the time. But nowadays, we have guys like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. And I mean, I personally, as somebody who has a science degree and is amazed with all this technology, I admire all these contributions that they have done and how their brain has helped us evolve with the world. But this is a discussion I was having with a friend that I made, a Romanian friend in my London Pret hangout. The problem that a lot of this internet giants have and this internet gurus is that they have always been elites. They have so little exposure to society that they don't really know what the rest is thinking. And many times when I ask for help from somebody and they don't want to help me, many times is that their reality is so different from mine that they just don't understand. They think that I have somehow gone mad, or there's something, whatever. They just don't understand the reality that you're in. And this is the problem. Just the lack of exposure. And I can talk a little bit about the issues with racism and Peace Corps in the States and the self-absorption. Maybe I'm going to talk about it later because I don't want to deviate from my topic on how to solve the issue with racism. This applies to Europe and the States. But, okay, for example, Elon Musk, he shames and makes fun of Alibaba's CEO in a conference room. I mean, what is the whole point? Like, why do you want to make fun of him? I mean, he's pretty cool, I think, Jackie Ma. Like, I've seen his videos, I think they're good. I mean, the fact that is he there to try to make fun of Elon Musk? He's just there to be himself and to expose ideas and to share with Elon Musk ideas. Like, why the whole attack on him and the lack of respect? I really just don't get it. I just really don't get it. Like, it's just rude, insensitive, etc. Or like, oh, I'm Elon Musk, I'm in a room full of PhDs and every single piece of paper is a piece of crap. Like, why do you want to say that? Every PhD paper is a piece of crap. I mean, at least they're trying to think and they're trying to get somewhere. I mean, they could just be drinking. Maybe Elon Musk wants them to go drinking and robbing banks. I don't know. So this is about Elon Musk. Jeff Bezos, I think it's impressive what Amazon has done. But I saw this video on Jeff Bezos, and he was like a little kid driving in his caravan with his grandparents, and just driving in his car, and then the video starts by saying something that everybody would think that he just wants to help, but it really just shows selfishness. It's like, I hate it. Jeff Bezos says, I started talking on how my grandma was smoking too many cigarettes, and I wanted to make sure that she would not smoke any more cigarettes. So I showed her how quickly she was going to die by solving a arithmetic problem. And it's like, because it bothered me, because the smoke bothered me. And then it probably has like, I don't know, 2 million followers or views or likes or whatever. And it's the most insensitive thing. Like, I mean, I grew up with my grandparents, and like, if anything, I wanted them to have the longer lives, not trying to impose my own space on them. And I mean, if people don't see that, and they just see Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos telling the world how smart they are and how better they are, then a lot of the younger generations are going to become like this. This is my first point. And my second point is about, also has to do with empathy and tolerance. And I think even though I grew up like upper middle class, or middle class, maybe not upper middle class. I mean, some people would argue it's upper middle class. I don't really know. Everybody likes to say that they're upper middle class because they don't sound like they're elites and posh. but they sound like they're better somehow. My parents they had this 2 people working for them, and they always treated them so well. We had meals with them. We visited their families. In their birthdays, we came over. Like in Costa Rica, people argue it's a little bit of a class-like society, and this is, as I travel the world, this is really true. Germany is another example of this. Even though there are elites, but I kind of know I have to spend more time to have a conclusion on this. So this is going back on exposure. So this exposure, and my mom really wanted me to see like indigenous people, and like she told me how important it was and how relevant the 12th of October was as a date. And then we have an example like the Peace Corps. And when I moved to the States, I remember my first one was a Peace Corps volunteer. And I think the problem comes from social ghettos. I think if you live in a social ghetto, like some of the elites that I mentioned, you stop understanding what other people think. So I think a lot of the problem with racism, and this is something that I've seen in Europe, or Europeans have this, I mean, there's obviously racism in Europe. It's not a racism depleted society. But within the Europeans, there's this tolerance about like other Europeans have come in and go out. And if you live in this bubble, I think you don't get exposure to all these ideas and all this way of thinking. And the Peace Corps volunteers, for example, who had lived in Africa or lived in Latin America, interacted with a lot of different people from all kinds of backgrounds, tended to have a much wider view of the world. So I think, and this applies, for example, in a society like the United States. If you were constantly interacting with other races and other classes at the same level, not as somebody who was hiring them to do something for you, then you stop being racist, or you slowly start deconstructing that idea. So I think, especially if you do this when you're young, because the brain is still subject to new ideas. So what I think is that a way to start decreasing the amount of ethnic polarization is just by creating little schools of different races in societies that have to coexist for people to see each other at the same level. I know it sounds unrealistic, but this is really the tolerant world, or the tolerant society that I envision to have for everybody else.